Little Isa loved to play. For her, play was the engine of childhood learning and discovery. On the playground, Isa and her friends would enthusiastically run, jump, slide, and climb. It felt like freedom. But even in their most energetic moments, Isa knew they had to follow a core rule: be responsible. This meant being careful, waiting for their turns, and respecting everyone's space. They had run, jumped, slid, and climbed yesterday, and they would do it tomorrow, always remembering to be respectful. Isa's imaginative play was just as important. With her friends, she would imagine, pretend, invent, and role-play complex scenarios. They cultivated amazing creativity. Yet, even in their made-up worlds, there was a rule. They had to include everyone and define the rules to make sure their shared world was fair. Isa knew the lasting memory of their games was always tied to how well they managed to include every friend. Even quiet activities needed discipline. When Isa and her friend Aiden would draw, color, cut, and glue their art projects, the creative part was only half the job. The other half was the rule to clean up and store the supplies safely. This was their duty to the shared space. They had drawn and glued yesterday and had to clean up. They knew they must clean up tomorrow, too. When they explored, curiosity was paired with caution. Isa loved to explore, discover, poke, and touch new objects, but she had to temper that drive with the need to ask permission and avoid danger. This was a constant lesson. Sharing toys also followed a rule. As Isa would share, trade, lend, and swap her favorite toys, she loved the feeling of generosity. But the act was incomplete without the responsibility to return them and handle them gently. Trust relied entirely on this careful handling and respectful return. Finally, Isa learned about managing life's little risks. Sometimes, while playing, they would fall, scrape, bump, and bruise themselves. This taught them resilience. When it happened, the final rule was to cry it out and band-aid the wounds. This helped with both the emotional hurt and the physical care. The action of putting on the Band-Aid completed the cycle of active play, making them ready to start again. Isa's world. Language as the architecture of responsibility. The story of little Isa is a practical lesson in understanding language as a system of rules that frames behavior, much like grammar frames communication. The passage's language is built on a recurring, predictable structure. It first presents a series of intense, unrestrained actions, the vocabulary of freedom, and then immediately introduces a necessary counterbalance, the syntax of responsibility. The verbs are the engine of the story, always grouped in dynamic clusters of 4. Run, jump, slide, and climb. Imagine, pretend, invent, and role-play. This linguistic pattern establishes the full scope and energy of Isa's play. However, these action verbs are consistently followed by a core rule, signaled by words like but and yet. This structure teaches us that the language of freedom is always incomplete without the language of constraint. Furthermore, the story uses temporal language, yesterday, tomorrow, to define the permanence of rules. When Isa cleans up, the story links her past actions, had drawn and glued yesterday, to her future duty, must clean up tomorrow too. This shows that responsibility is not a one-time event, but a continuous grammatical rule that applies across all time. The final unifying lesson is that true freedom in Isa's shared world, the ability to keep playing, is achieved only when the rules of respect, inclusion, and care are properly executed, making language the blueprint for constructive social behavior. The grammatical structure of Isa's story is intentionally parallel and compound, architected to showcase the duality between free-flowing action and necessary constraint. The core sentence structure establishes the breadth of activity and the stability of the rules primarily through coordination and verb phrases. The engine of the structure is the repeated use of a 4-part verb phrase, a tetrad, connected by the conjunction and, often in a structure called polysyndeton, the use of multiple conjunctions as seen in examples like Isa and her friends would enthusiastically run, jump, slide, and climb, or Aiden would draw, color, cut, and glue their art projects. This grammatical pattern efficiently packs a maximum amount of action into a single clause, creating a sense of unrestricted, energetic flow. Following this energetic verb phrase, the text structurally pivots using an adversative conjunction or adverb like but or yet. This creates a compound or complex sentence structure where the second clause introduces the restraint, exemplified by the transition from the action "it felt like freedom" to the pivot, but even in their most energetic moments, Isa knew they had to follow a core rule. This grammatical shift mirrors the thematic shift from freedom to responsibility, making the language structure itself a model for the required balance in Isa's life. Finally, the story ensures consistency through tense and modality, utilizing past and future tenses alongside modal auxiliary verbs like would, had to, and must to cement the enduring nature of the rules. Phrases like, "they had run, jumped, slide, and climbed yesterday" establish historical adherence, while the use of must, "they knew they must clean up tomorrow too," expresses obligation and future certainty. This consistent grammatical framework enforces the idea that responsibility is a permanent, required action, not a transient choice, providing a robust foundation for Isa's learning.